Hey everyone, today we're gonna show you how to go from this set of stairs to this set of stairs. Well, hey, I got my very first contracting job. That's exciting. And let's take a look at these stairs, shall we? The owner does want a new set of stairs because there is an awkward step here, a 2-inch concrete step with 1.5 inches of some, might be old redwood. And I've already got my total rise and run. One interesting constraint in this project is the way they cut into these beams with this concrete, and seeing how far this concrete goes back. I'll dig that up just a little bit to see. And you can tell that this stringer actually split, partially because they toe-nailed that nail and there's no mounting hardware on it, but also because there's no kicker really to keep that from coming forward. We are gonna tear these old steps out. We're gonna trim this concrete back just a little bit and put a new ledger board properly mounted, and use all new lumber. I'm thinking this is a big job for me. For some of you, it's probably not that big of a job, but I'm excited and we'll see how it goes. The first step here is to demo all the existing stairs. Sometimes you just gotta make the project looked worse before you really get into it. I'm having a little bit of trouble with these posts, and they really nail them a lot, so getting those extra nails out. I like to keep a clean job site, so I rinsed everything down. I was planning on using a concrete diamond saw on my grinder to take off this section of stone, but I decided it was ended up easier being to dig out the back and just push these concrete stones back. And now I'm thinking about even digging them out and just setting them down a little bit deeper. That means my stringer can have a little bit more structural support, and then I can actually just flush these up against the concrete, and maybe I'll use some kind of caulk to keep the water out from there. My buddy Kent ended up helping me flush those concrete slabs up and cutting it to size. Ended up being a ton of more work than we thought, but we were glad when we finally got it into place. Props to my wife Amber, who ran to the hardware store to get us some sand. A lot of my construction, because I'm new, is just thinking about how things need to be done. In this case, I'm using that final riser attached to the building or the existing deck, and I was deciding whether it was better to just scrape off the paint and stain that existing riser, or to pull it out. I ended up pulling it out and replacing it. It cost me a board, which wasn't too big of a deal, but in the end it looked a lot nicer for the customer. A lot of, in remodel type work, things just are not square, and that was one mistake I made making these set of stairs. A couple things aren't square on here with the existing framework, so like that top step drops about 1/4 inch, and that's just how they built the existing deck. And then that right rail comes out about 1/2 inch farther than the left rail, and I was building everything square, and so in the end actually there is a little bit of a difference. I could have hid that by cutting a board at an angle, one of those bottom treads, and that would have fixed it. Hanging all these stringers, it was really hard to get back there and measure everything and get the right hangers into place. It's just a tight working space, So those stringer hangers from Simpson Hardware, they're great, and it's probably overkill for this job, but I just wanted to make everything right for the customer. It took quite a while to make sure everything was just level and plumb and true. I'm cutting off little slices and shimming a little bit in places just to make everything perfectly square. When you're finally going to go up the stairs, you don't want much of a variance in each step, and so getting it right makes it a more comfortable walk up. And in the end, it was really comfortable. It was nice to walk up and down the stairs. Also, in the end, the the lumber, that pressure-treated lumber was really wet and it ended up shrinking. I left no gaps. Oh, here's an area where I used a strap to pull that board in close. It kind of worked, but it also, that wood was so wet it just cut into the board a little bit, so it ended up being a bad idea to kind of help shape that crown. I probably could have just used screwed it down in one area and then used a pry bar to flush it up with the board next to it. That lumber I mentioned was really wet, and I left 0 gaps in between the treads and between the treads and risers, and it ended up shrinking, even leaving about an 1/8 inch gap, which was just about perfect. This last riser was just a pain to get exactly right. I had to cut a custom piece to fit it into the posts, in between the posts, and to make it right for the stairs too. So it actually took me a lot of extra time to figure out, and I even shorted it. It was hard to wiggle in there, so I would have ended up having to create a little shim plug to put in both sides there anyway. It would have just been a little bit smaller. I'm really pleased with how these stairs turned out. It was my first paid construction gig, and I'm really proud. It took me probably way more time than it would have taken maybe a lot of you who are experienced. But the owner was really pleased, and I was as well. Wow, how come I cannot flip the camera around? I am so old. What does this button do?